Our national championship softball coach loves his K10 truck, and who would, man? These things are awesome. But after 40 years, the differential finally gave it up. I mean, this thing grenaded. I'm pouring fluid in, it's coming right out the bottom. There's chunks laying on the ground. It's definitely differential time today on Tech Garage. Welcome to Tech Garage, brought to you by rockauto.com. Well, we got our beautiful K10 pickup truck in the shop here. Four-wheel drive, beefy, it's been through the ringer. But you know the good part about it is, Brian, this one's a no-brainer, man. Those pieces I had up there in the driveway and the fluid breaking out, there's even a hole there. This is going to be an easy diagnostic one for you.
Yeah, it looks like a hand grenade may have gone off inside this thing. There's a hole, there's fluid, it continues to bleed. You can hear some rattling, banging. So why don't I pop this cover off and look at the evidence?
Why don't you do that? You know, and we got two options at this point. We can go ahead and replace the whole differential, or we can rebuild it. Today we're going to show you both of them on Tech Garage. I mean, we're going to go through the rebuild process and replace this differential with one from Zimbrota. It's a pretty good differential. We'll be in good shape there, but here's the whole key, man. Let's see what's going on in there.
See.
Ooh. Wow, take a look at this, Brian.
Look, I'll tell you what. Oh, yeah. Perfect.
Yeah, there you go.
Were you driving when this happened?
It's coming apart. There's no doubt about it.
Sweep back up in here with a magnet. Oh yeah, we've got some more fragments there. Look at that.
Absolutely. Let me bring you up to speed. We actually knew we were going to have to replace the differential because of all the damage inside of there. So we went ahead and took out the actual drive shaft. We removed the brake lines that come back. I got this one separated here. It's nice. It's an older truck. It's easy to work on. Yeah. Now we just start pulling the differential. I mean, there's really nothing to it. A couple of U-bolts, some shock absorbers. Yeah. A couple of tips though. You know, I really supported this thing well in the front, Brian, when you're lifting a truck like this. If you have a lift, remember all your weight's in the front of this truck. I mean, there's nothing but a bed on here and a differential. Once this comes down, boom, that truck's going over.
It's heavy.
Yeah, so we're pretty well supported. So what's your first step over there?
Same thing. Just like if you're working in your driveway, you got to have it stable at all four corners of the vehicle to tackle this project. I think for me, I'm going to go ahead and get this shock off. The upper U-bolts, I got them cracked loose. We'll get them and get the weight. Now you've got it supported very nicely, but the weight's going to be free floating here at that point, and we can just back it all down.
Absolutely.
But disconnecting everything in advance and anticipating that is a huge tip and time saver.
Yeah, it will. And he's got this bar down here, some kind of track bar. I don't know. We'll just take that with it. I'm not sure if that's too necessary there.
All right.
We'll come through and go ahead. Let's nail these shocks. And
okay. Right. Sometimes you have to encourage these lower mounting bolts out. This one got lucky. That came right out nicely. Okay, we've got that free. Swap sockets, U-bolts up on top.
The beautiful thing is a K truck is a four-wheel drive series truck, so it's a nice 12-bolt differential. It's a 373 gear pattern. Brian, once we get all those off now, we want to support it, so slow down a minute and give me a chance to get caught up to you. So here's the deal. I'm going to go ahead and let you give your first shot. Support it, hold it. We don't know if it's going to come or not. Oh, that was a nasty one. That's what you're going to run into. It's nice you got that air, I'll tell you what. Yep. All right, so you may be free, maybe not, but let me go ahead and do this, and then we'll start manipulating it, and we'll get it out of there. Quite sure if it's going to come down or not. Let me take a little bit of the weight off here with the jack stand.
Yep.
I think we got everything.
There we go.
There it goes. I'm telling you.
That's right where the front of the truck would have tipped.
Beautiful. Nice.
Yep. All right, so it's going to want to roll forward.
All right, you got yours down?
Yep. Let's just keep it even coming down. We've got to move our tables.
All right.
That's good.
Line supported. You got the end there?
Right tool for the job makes all the difference here, buddy.
All right,
if you're doing the full swap, be sure you got a lift.
No doubt about it. Get you a buddy. We'll put it on here. You know, when we come back with more Tech Garage, stick around because we're going to look at a rebuild and we're going to go ahead and start replacing this differential. We'll be back with more Tech Garage presented by rockauto.com.
It's going to be awesome.
Tech Garage, presented by RockAuto.com, is brought to you by Custom Auto Sound, the originator of classic car OEM fit radios since 1977. Mobile Environmental Solutions, the leading portable mobile paint booth. And by RockAuto.com, all the parts your car will ever need.
Welcome back to Tech Garage, presented by RockAuto.com. Well, we got our differential on the table, and Brian, we got some investigation work to do.
Yeah.
But before we do that, let's actually take a look at the kit they sent. A whole bearing kit right here, which is cool because you got the bearings, the side, the preload bearings, you have the shims, you have the crush collars, marking compound, even the nut comes with it, and of course, a new ring and pinion. 373 gear ratio, man, we're in.
Truly everything you need, but if you're a replace candidate, not a rebuild candidate like we are, I think you're going to see why. A little bit of investigation work we got to do here.
Absolutely, and you know, I got the nut loose already that holds the actual shaft in there. I'm going to pull this out.
Yep.
Brian, I want to find out what that gear actually came off of, so let me spin this around, see if we can get the pin out.
Look at that. It never comes that easy.
No, now give
It's
it a
your
good
day,
shove
buddy.
in there if you would.
Are you ready?
Yep. There you go.
right.
Look at that. There's the first. We'll get that first clip, as you call it.
Nice.
We'll harvest it right out of there.
Harvest that guy right out.
See if I can shove my. Oh, mine
Yep.
fell.
Well
Nice
done.
day. All right, we're
living
lucky.
right.
Grab your
Okay.
axle and just
Squeeze
yank
out.
it on out of there.
There you
Set
go.
them down.
On down
Right, it
here.
never fails. You get me in this axle grease, man. It's a mess.
Yeah, well, we do what we can. You know,
right.
it's interesting. There's actually a little evidence if you look at the toe there of wear. And there's a heel in the toe of that face, and you want the wear in the middle, right?
Right.
You're going to show how that works. But even more evidence, we got a problem.
For sure. Now what I'm going to do is I was going to rebuild this. I would go ahead and mark these caps. That's super important that you mark the caps and put them back in the same direction. It's just like a main cap on the engine. But I could just loosen these. I don't want to take them all the way out. Brian, you got a pry bar back there?
Yeah, we
Give
do.
you a little trick. We'll get this out. And this may just knock that carrier out unless it's all seized in there. We don't know.
There you
So if
go.
we take this joker right here, spin it up, and there it goes. All right,
Well
so we
done.
knock it right out of there.
There you go.
Now what I can do is finish taking these caps off.
And
And
spider gears look respectable too.
It does.
I'm betting on opinion.
it's in good shape. I'm hoping so. I hope we see something where
Yeah.
somebody.
Well, there's enough metal fragmentation and shavings around here to know that something very bad
Yep.
happened in the rear end of this 79. Look at that.
Smells pretty good too.
Yeah.
All right, so when you're taking this out as well, mark the shims. Where are they going? I got
Got
shims
to.
on both sides. Very, very important. All right, look at that mess. Awesome. All right, so
Yep.
the pinion's in there. Wow. Brian, why don't you take that nut off back
Tell
there?
you what, okay, great. And if you don't have a buddy to help you hold this, you can make a homemade bracket, put it right into the flange there, hold that yoke when you hit it with a gun. I've already got it cracked loose. I should be able to get it. There we go.
There you go.
All right, nuts off.
Awesome. Now you want to use a puller to get that off. Since
Yep.
ours is destroyed, just give it a couple taps.
Yeah,
but a
it's
puller is always in order for pulling that off.
There you go,
Tap
buddy.
this- Tap. Oh, it's coming right
Yep,
out of there.
right
Keep
out.
going.
Yep.
Oh, look at that.
There you go.
Hey, bingo.
Oh.
There is our missing piece. Man, that is
Easy
brutal.
investigation in that case.
Yep, and that whole thing was clunking around in there, bearings the whole 9 yard, crush collar.
Wow.
Pretty difficult to set up. Brian, I'm going to give the disclaimer. This isn't an installation video, but yet I'll give him a couple tips. Why don't you get the differential
I'm
set
taking
up?
my gun and I'm doing it.
Awesome. Now, if we're going to rebuild this thing, we have to go through a couple steps. And first one is sending that pinion depth. Underneath this pinion down here is a shim. It looks just like this. So what you want to do is I had to go out and get a special tool. You get a tool like this here, right here. You put it in here, the saddles, depending on the size, dial indicator on the end, and you measure how far that pinion's going to go in. That's called pinion depth, all right? Then we're going to do a deal called pinion preload. Now, pinion preload is actually using that crush collar you saw right there. Now, once it's crushed, you can't reuse it. So what you want to do is you want to put it on there, put your pinion in, and then get you an inch-pound torque wrench with some kind of beam. This one happens to be a 1/2 inch, but we'd spin it and we would watch how much preload it takes to spin that on the actual differential itself. That's called pinion preload. So you're setting up the preload, you're setting up the depth. Why do you want to do that? Well, you want the tooth pattern to match on all of it. And then we're going to look at 2 other measurements. One of them is the whole bearing load on the side and backlash. Well, that's what all these shims were. When we pulled the shims out, it was super important that we measured the shims. Either get you a little tag or tag them and put them back in the same spot, or you're going to have to get a shim kit and you're going to have to measure that, and I'll show you that in a second. Now, once we get it in there and we got the backlash set, we can go ahead and add a couple of shims for preload to lock that thing in there to make sure it's going to be secure. I told you it was probably a good idea idea to just go ahead and replace that differential. This is why. It's pretty intense surgery when you get in there, and you know, you could have some noises as well. But come on over here with me, I'll show you what a couple of the final steps are. If you see right here on this differential, I actually have it set up to a dial indicator. I go back and forth like that. That's actually backlash. We're reading that backlash. Remember we set that earlier with that pinion going in and out. And then one of the final checks, and one of the most important checks you can do once you get it all set up, you call toothpaste contact. I take a little bit of this right here, paint it on these teeth, maybe 3, 4 teeth, both sides, the convex and the coast side on both of these. And then what I'll do once I got it painted on there, I'll go ahead and rotate it around and I'll read the toothpaste contact. That's important. So if I come around here and get it into that pinion, make sure it goes into that pinion, I spin it around, and then I'm going to look, where did it contact? Now take a look at this graphic right here. This is why it's so important, because if it contacts on the bottom of this tooth, you have toe contact. Up on the top, you have shim, you have heels, you have face. Just depending on which way, you increase backlash, decrease backlash, or pinion shims. It's pretty difficult. So we chose to put the New Zimbrata differential in there. That's going to do the trick. Brian's underway. He's going to need some help.
Man, I've got this thing looking good, and the axle too.
What you been doing over here? I mean, you got nowhere.
Hey, I had to put a chrome differential cover on it. It's the start of a good restoration, and I want to see how good I look.
Yeah, you're one here. Here, grab this joker here, get your blocks in there. Now, if you look at this right here, I'm showing you it's actually got a pitch to it. This is important because it's actually developing our angle to our pinion. Exactly. So, Brian, here's what we'll do. Let's get yours where you're close to get it started.
Okay.
All right, and walk you back and forth. Which way? To my way or?
I can't. I got a mark here. Let me come down a little bit.
In the center of it. Feel good
That's
right
too
there?
far. Yeah, try that. There we go.
All right,
We're good.
perfect. Bring mine up. And this
Yep.
is why you need 2 people. This thing is
Got to.
massive, man. It's a beast.
Got
Look
to.
at that. Nice.
Yeah.
All right.
Well done. U-bolts, buddy.
Yep, we hung our U-bolts right here, which makes it a lot easier to do. May have to bend them in or out as you go. You also see that our axle's on. Of course, we're gonna have to pull them out and put new brakes on, and that's pretty cool because Rock Auto set us the whole brakes, the shoes, the wheel cylinders, new drums, the whole 9 yards, because you know, this one was not only as old as it is, it was pretty well toasted. They were all wet with axle fluid and everything else, so it's a must to replace that.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing that's significant, we got to, get this thing topped off with fluid. We've got some Spicer friction modifier, which will be really helpful in the break-in period. And everybody's got different theories on break-ins, but here's the deal. Take it easy. Go 300 to 500 miles, replace the differential fluid, lubricant again, check for metal fragmentation in there, make sure there's no damage being done, but take it easy on all that so much steel that John showed you, this heat that you got to dissipate. So
Yeah.
take it easy on all that.
It's like an engine. I mean, it's going to go ahead and it's going to start to wear out after time or wear the patterns in there, and you got to get that fluid back out of there. Brian, this is in good shape. Now just reverse the procedure, put the shocks in there, torque them all to specifications, make sure they're good and snug. And then Brian, you know what? We're ready to take this thing out. I know there's some mud out there, man. We're going to give it a little test drive and make sure it's good to go.
I can't wait.
Yep, you guys stick around. Garage Ed is up next. We got an awesome segment for you. We'll be right back with more Tech Garage presented by rockauto.com. Welcome back to Tech Garage, presented by rockauto.com. Now, throughout this whole season, we've taken you through all kinds of electrical components and some of their diagnosis. Well, it really all boils down to this, getting you out in the driveway so you can make some of these repairs. And it all starts with some strategy-based diagnosing. What's that? Well, it's simply looking for some good components to find bad components. To do that, well, I got an air condition board right here laid out for you. Only on Tech Garage we can show you how it works and the voltages. Here's an air condition board. So I turn it on, I'm running through a switch. After I run through a switch, it's going to either come right directly to the blower motor or it's going to go through a resistor block right here. This is how it steps down the speeds, and then it either goes through a high-speed relay directly to the blower motor or it bypasses it all for some resistance. Sounds pretty complex, but take a look at this schematic right here. I'm going to pull up a graphic for you. Now, I know schematics used to be graphics, know, years ago, all the spaghetti. No more. They just kind of isolate the component. When they isolate the component, you can see it right here. It started up at the fuse. There's that switch I was talking about. This is one whole switch up here. Up here is actually where you dial it on and off vent, and then here's the speeds. This is important. We'll take a look at each one of these. Then I go over to my resistor block, which we just saw earlier. Down below, I have that high-speed relay that bypasses or allows the electricity to flow down to the motor. We're going to deal with the purple wire going down to the motor, and then we're going to look at the voltages on all the actual wires. This is really cool. So the first thing you want to do, let's just say, for example, your blower motor wasn't working. Well, strategy-based diagnosis, I come down to the ground and I come to the purple wire. That's the one we said was going down to the blower motor, and we have 0 volts. So we don't have any voltage to it. Obviously, it's not going to run. If you had 12 volts, it would be a bad blower motor. Just a systematic. Now I can check the ground side by switching this over to the positive on the battery and coming up here to the ground. If I come to the ground, you can see that I'm producing 12 volts. That means that the ground side is good. Well, we're going to go back and go through each one of the speeds. Now, if it was working, let's go strictly to high first. So if I cut it on and I go to high, you can see there's 12 volts going down to the blower motor. That's a good thing. But let's pull up our schematic again. Maybe we have some intermittent problems or some speed problems. So if we go to that first wire, that's brown. Well, that brown wire on the top of that schematic is running through that resistor block, all of them. So I'm going to put it on that, and I'm going to show you. If you look at the voltage now on the brown wire, we're only at about 5 volts. That's not a lot of voltage, and that's why the motor's running slow. Now to go back to the graphic one more time, we'll just go down the line. The tan wire. The tan wire is the next wire. That's the next speed up. I go to that one, go across, you can see 8.7 volts. We're climbing and climbing and climbing. It's going a little bit faster. Back to the graphic one more time. The last one's the light blue down there. The light blue is only going through one of these resistor blocks, so if I fire it up, you can see there's 10 volts. Now when we bypass it totally, there's our 12 volts high. So it's just a matter of a systematic diagnostic approach. It's really simple. Step by step, work your way up. Go slow, pull that schematic. Rock Auto's got service manuals with all the schematics in it. Now, if you're dealing with a new car, last but not least, you're probably dealing with a computer and an actual pulse width modulation. Deal's a little bit different, but you still have all the same inputs. Make the same checks, you'll be in good shape. Matter of fact, Tom has some of this on rockauto.com. We're going to take a look at. Well, cars have evolved, and so has the AC systems. Tom, we went from resistor blocks to pulse width modulation. I mean, it may turn it on, 50%, you're feeling medium, 100% for high. It could pulse it. Computers play a big factor. What if I go to rockauto.com? I'm going to find everything.
In the early 2000s, they moved from this, where you have the resistors generating all this heat. If the blower motor isn't going full speed, you're just generating heat and resistors. They went from that to the pulse width modulation, so it's just cycling on and off. Runs much cooler, much simpler. If you actually get under the dash of a car made in the last 10 years, you'll be surprised how much room there is there, because you got the computers controlling things versus these elaborate electromechanical complex systems.
Yeah, it's been a big difference. Now, we read a schematic over there. That's a big deal, too. I mean, you guys got some help there as well.
Right. In our bi-monthly newsletter article, we did a story about a car I was working on, my wife's car, and the fuel pump wasn't working. So I looked at the schematic. I said, okay, the inertia switch, the switch in the trunk that is supposed to disconnect the fuel pump if the car's in an accident, that's supposed to be right before the fuel pump. And I checked, and the inertia switch had power. So I thought, oh, it must be the fuel pump. But then I took another look at the wiring diagram, and I saw it was labeled Canada. That's something to watch for. The USA version of the vehicle, which was another part of the wiring diagram, actually had the inertia switch right after the ignition switch. And it turned out the fuel pump wasn't working because there was corrosion in the big connector that goes into the engine computer.
We've been putting this in practice at the table. I say we pull in a real car with a real problem, come over and help me diagnose it. You're going to have to wait for next week for that. But don't go far away, because there's plenty more Tech Garage presented by rockauto.com right after this break.
Tech Garage, presented by RockAuto.com, is brought to you by Borla, the world's most winning exhaust. AP Laser, leading the way. And by RockAuto.com, all the parts your car will ever need.
Welcome back to Tech Garage, brought to you by RockAuto.com and one of our favorite segments of the show.
Yeah, you know, Tony's car is running good, but it's got an island problem. Let's hear what Tony has to say about it.
Hey, Tech Garage guys, Started up my car this morning to go to work, and it's hunting for an idle, up, down, sometimes even stalls. What should I check first?
Well, Tony, it could be an idle air control motor, or if it's a new car, it's drive-by-wire. That's going to get a lot more complex. But our Firebird employs the idle air control motor, Brian.
Yeah, it actually couldn't be any simpler. Access is easy, and it's just a metering gate, metering valve for that idle process. I'm going to back this one out and show you very quickly just how easy it comes out and what bad looks like. You'll feel the O-ring there, and you can look at the plungers. You can see the difference. Think of the air miles coming by that guy, and the spring gets fatigued, so very easy replacement.
Yeah, and you think about that. Take a look at the graphic. This is exactly what's going on, and that's what Brian said. It's metering the air. So on the graphic, you can see the throttle on an old school car is completely closed. The air's coming up. It's going around, and that idle air control either steps forward, closes the air supply, which lowers the idle, or it steps back, opens that air supply, which raises the idle. Brian, looks like you're reversing the procedure there.
Yep, and the O-ring comes with the new part we got from rockauto.com. There's a shelf inside. Be sure it sits down on that shelf. You get the mounting screws right back where they belong. The wiring harness only goes one way and only fits one way. I'll get that all buttoned back up. Couldn't be simpler. I think that solved the problem.
Yeah, and Tony, check out your check engine light. Sometimes it'll determine if that's doing it or not doing it. You know, pretty easy fix. The differential, though, wow.
Awesome job. 1979 K10. Who doesn't love that chassis? Famous platform. The rear end stronger than ever.
I'll tell you what it is. We took it out. We did a little bit of mud bogging, man. We spun those tires. No sounds, no growling. Man, we're in.
For you, follow the proper break-in period. Remember, change that diff fluid 300 to 500 miles in. No towing, no burnouts, no tearing up the mud in yours after you do the project, and protect that investment. Hey guys, keep the questions coming. We love hearing from you. Thanks for watching us here on Tech Garage, brought to you by rockauto.com.
Production assistance for Tech Garage is provided by Chipola College, located in Marianna, Florida. Founded in 1947, Chipola was ranked recently as one of the top 3 community colleges in the United States.